Hey everybody, my name's Adam Brous,
I'm Scott Moppin.
and this is Solutions from the Multiverse, where we bring you a new solution every week to your happy earballs.
So thanks for joining us, and come by each Tuesday morning. We'll have a new episode ready for you. Here we go.
Welcome, everybody. Hey there, Scott. And Scott, I've brought a guest for us today who
Hey,
has
fantastic.
a solution to share. This is Jonah Lynch. Welcome, Jonah.
Hey, Adam. Hi, Scott. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, Jonah has a cool thing to share. He is he has a cool background too. We're going to get into his background too, but we're going to start with his solution. But Jonah and I met on a boat, and we started talking about physics and metaphysics and all the physics of the world.
Nice.
And it was a great conversation, and so we made friends after that. But he's working on a really interesting thing that is in the AI realm. I know Scott's not a lover of AI, but I think it's what's cool about what Jonah's doing. I'll just say first off is that it's not your run of the mill AI. It's not like a ChatGPT wrapper doing like HR for you or something stupid like that. It's really cool. So I'm happy to have invited him on because he has an unheard of but really potent solution to share.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. So thank you.
Right. Do you want to tell us a little bit about Innovation Lens? That's the name.
Yeah. Well, why don't I give you a metaphor? And we'll start with the metaphor and then we'll see where that brings us. So Innovation Lens is like a map of what has already been done in science and what is likely to happen next. And if you think about a map of territory where, people have partially explored, you're going to have some areas that are covered with roads and trails and human, buildings, things like that. And you're also going to have empty spaces on the map. And the empty spaces call to our spirit, they call to our sense of adventure. And some people want to go into the empty spaces. And so Innovation Lens is like that kind of a map of the innovation landscape, the scientific research landscape, where you can see continents and islands of knowledge that has already been discovered, and also the empty spaces like the sea where people haven't gone yet and could go. And on top of that, we also have a predictive layer, so it's possible to see with a pretty good precision. So it's 70% precision, which means our predictions, 7 out of 10 of them end up being true. Where should you go next? So it's kind of like a predictive suggestion about where are we ready to go and explore next.
Yeah. Now, where should you go next is a question that's not helpful for me because I'm not out there. But is this like researchers and scientists use that to figure out how to take the next steps on their
Well,
projects?
yeah, I mean, think about if you're, I mean, the first place that I started was PhD students. I was a PhD student writing my thesis, and this came out of some of the ideas that I had at that time. You're going to dedicate 3 to 5 years of your life to something. You'd want to choose a topic that's actually going to be relevant, going to be useful. And that doesn't often happen. So part of what I was trying to do was help PhD students decide their topics with better precision. Of course, that applies to early stage researchers. It applies to people who would like to get tenure. You want to write an article on something that gets big. And if there are patterns in the data, as I found, then perhaps you can choose this rather than that and get a better job later on.
So it kind of allows people to get ahead of the curve on things, even like as an idea to be in the right spot, in the right place at the right time when it pops.
Yeah, so that's definitely part of it. Now, the trouble I ran into was that researchers don't have any money, and so it's
All that
kind of
PhD student money, there's no
they don't even have money for pizza. I mean, come on.
right.
So I was trying to sell my predictions for $1 a pop, and I still wasn't able to sell any. So
You were just like the
people,
great Zoran sitting at a carnival in Staten Island, like, give me $1 and I will tell you your PhD thesis.
I could help you. You just have to work with me.
Just give me $1.
all right.
You said
So-
yours is a map, but it's really more like a Ouija board.
No,
The
it's not like a
future.
Ouija board.
It tells the future. Let's all put our hands on the innovation lens.
So then, if that plan, the original plan, wasn't taking off, what was your next move?
Yeah, so then we went to investors. Investors have money and they have a real problem, so you've got some amount of money that you want to deploy in the market and you had better get it right, at least some of the time. And so having an edge where you can say, 7 out of 10 of our predictions actually turn out to be true is something that investors are interested in. So we've started actively working with VC firms. We have a couple of different arrangements going right now, but the best one was 2 years ago. We worked with a company that was trying to deploy a future of computing fund, and they asked us for help deciding where to invest on that. And we gave them 4 suggestions, and 3 of them they really liked, and one of them was LLM generated code. So that's companies like Cursor, Codex, these companies, Lovable. And everybody now knows that was a great bet. That was, a 200x bet over the last 2 years. So that really worked out well. And we have some others like that.
Nice.
Wow.
Very cool.
Sick.
So
that was a good bet. And didn't you, I think you told me about them. Didn't you also tell them not to invest in quantum computing?
Yes, that's right. Now, the reason for that was that they were looking to deploy 100 million. And we looked at what was possible and what was likely on the innovation frontier and said, look, with 100 million, you're just not going to be able to break into the technologies that are going to give you a return in 5 to 10 years. So why don't you invest in other things? And we gave them, besides the Cursor LLM code generation, we gave them a couple of other options too.
What if you just started your own fund?
Yeah, that would be a great idea. The problem is I'm not very good at fundraising. And so
Damn it.
If I knew how to get the money, I could tell you where to put it.
I know people who know how to do fundraising. Maybe we should try to put our own fund together.
It's
That would be
so
cool.
often that the
Fun.
making of the thing and the
Called
selling
the
of the thing
fun
are two
fund.
different skill sets held by two different people,
They really are. They really are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll do some
Actually,
poking around about that. That'd be cool. Because it seems like if you can make a bet that you should put money into, Lovable and Cursor
Yeah.
2 years ago, that's amazing. I mean, that's a really good ability.
December 2023, man. So yeah, I was
pretty
saying
wild,
that
yeah.
early. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that's cool. And even if you only put a third or a quarter of your capital in that, I mean, the benefit, because it
That was
becomes so
the Pareto distribution right there. You would have blown it out. Yeah.
Pareto distribution. Now you're going over my head.
Oh, come on, Adam. You know what
I know
that
this
is.
one.
That's
That one's 80-20,
That sounds
right?
like a parental distribution, like a parent. Here is your allowance. The parental distribution.
Is that
I thought
the
you said
80?
Scott was the comedian.
Well, you're the expert today. Usually I'm like proposing the solution and Scott
You've let Adam off the chain.
Yeah,
He doesn't have
I'm
to
off.
do his normal.
I'm loose. The juice is loose,
All right.
So Jonah, let me find. So
okay, now Scott's being the serious one. Okay,
yeah, we're switching roles. This is great.
This is crazy.
But as a person who doesn't understand AI or use it all that much, how could you just walk me through, like, how does this work? I mean, I'm imagining it's not just like type into a computer, what's the next smart thing, and it goes, well, here it is. So like,
Yeah,
that's my basic understanding. How can you help me flesh out what's actually going on with this thing?
So, all right, I'm going to try to be a little bit brief here, but the technical details are interesting. So, the big breakthrough, now it was foreshadowed in plenty of other work decades earlier. So, I don't want to say that this was the only thing on the scoreboard. But in 2013, a Google team led by Mikolov published an article called Word to Vec, and this article showed a way that you could take the output layer of a transformer, not a transformer, output layer of a neural network, and use that as a representation of text. So what does that mean in layman's terms? You could make a vector, which is basically saying like a position in space that is associated with every word in a language. And the famous example that they use in their paper is that if you take the vector for king and you subtract the vector for man, you add the vector for woman, you get the vector for queen. So it's like you can do an algebra in this abstract space where the meaning of words is converted into basically physical locations. So based on that idea, you can take all kinds of different text and turn it into vectors and then do algebraic and geometric reasoning on the distribution or the relations between the spaces in different words. You can take a phrase and represent it as the sum of all the vectors of the words that it contains, and then you can do also more complicated things than that. So essentially, what I was doing during my doctorate was using this technique to automatically read very large corpora. I was working on ancient history and archaeology, and the ability to read gigantic databases like the entire Bible and all of the Babylonian religious texts and compare them by doing natural language processing was the field of work that I was in.
Okay.
What I realized was that this space of vectors that represent texts has mathematical characteristics that can be studied in their own right. And now the interesting thing about that is you're taking AI, so you're taking the large neural network representation of everything that humans have written and using that to represent some subset. So, whatever texts you're working on, I was working on comparing the Psalms with some of the Babylonian religious texts.
Okay.
And then you can use the mathematical characteristics of those two groupings, of those two clusters, to draw certain kinds of conclusions. And those conclusions are inner referential. So this is something I really cared about, and at that time in particular, for motives that we might get into later with Adam. But I wanted to study text in a way that wasn't making reference to outside information, but was all self-contained. And I wanted to figure out how to, maybe you can't say very much, but I wanted to say things that are very, very certain about the relationship between texts without making any appeal to authority, without making any appeal to metaphysics outside of these text representations inside of the neural network. So to answer your question directly, Innovation Lens uses this representation of scientific literature now, so not the Bible, but scientific articles. And by looking at the relationships between the places, the locations where these articles are you say it, embedded in abstract space using the text vectorization, we can see patterns that have predictive value. And now that's the part that's patent pending. So that's the part I don't want to really say exactly how it works.
Sure,
but
sure.
we can say that there's a Goldilocks distance where there are fields that are so sparse that it's very unlikely that if you do new research in that field, you're going to hit gold. And there are other fields where the field has been dug up so much that it's very unlikely you're going to find any gold because it's already been extracted. But there is a Goldilocks distance where you are most likely to find some treasure if you go dig there. Now, of course, you're going to have to be good at digging, you're going to have to be good at writing, you're going to have to be smart. So it's not like the output of Innovation Lens guarantees success, but what it does do is it says the research landscape is ready for a discovery in this area. Go look there. That's your best bet.
So like an oil driller might be like, we don't know exactly where is the best spot to drill, but if someone can give us based on other clues, most likely here, it gives us a better chance at striking what we're looking for. That makes total.
Yes.
Is that, do
exactly.
I have that? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
So it's like when an old man holds those like a stick with a
divining
Y-shaped
rod?
stick, and he starts walking around, and then all of a sudden it tips down. It's like, that's oil.
My parents literally did that on our land. We built our house and they
Oh.
literally had a well
Really?
wisher come and find where to dig the hole. Yeah.
And it worked first try?
It worked. It worked absolutely. Now,
So,
I don't know. Probably there's a water table you're going to hit it one way or another.
So, Jonah, it kind of sounds like, and forgive me if I'm not understanding this right, but it kind of sounds like Innovation Lens, or it's like the program is, what if there was a person who could read every single piece of science literature and have perfect memory, and then all of a sudden go, oh, I think these things might be connected, or drawing connections that a normal, like an actual human could never do because of our limits
Yes.
of our abilities.
Exactly. No, you
Okay.
hit it exactly. I mean, you guys wanted to start with the solution and end with the problem, but that is exactly the problem that I was frustrated by. I was working on this doctorate, working with a research team, and we would argue every week for many hours about what we were reading and thinking. And what I realized after a couple of years was that we kept arguing about the same things without ever really addressing the upstream reason that we were disagreeing on them. And so I started to build out graph representations of our arguments to try to arrive at what was the node, what was the real thing that we were disagreeing on. And then I ran into the problem that you just mentioned, which is there's a vast amount of information that we couldn't ever take into account because it's just too much. And yet it's there, so we ought to, So I built my programs because of that. I wanted to see if I could make an intellectual prosthetic that would allow me to take into account more information than I can natively.
That's awesome. And I mean, I get a rap for being an anti-AI guy, which is partly true, but this is the space I want AI to be using. Like I want AI to be doing supercomputing on things that human brains can't do, like figuring out research and science and things that are helpful. I bristle up more when people are like, we should use it to make paintings and like movies and like music and stuff. And I'm like, no,
Yeah,
humans
yeah.
already do that very well.
So you've mentioned a few times like debates you were having, and you were talking about the Bible. I know that you used to be a Catholic priest before
Yes, I
you
was.
became a
That's right.
mathematician, or before you got a PhD in math, but you were probably a mathematician a little bit before then.
Is that why you were comparing religious texts earlier?
Well, let's say it was a bridge. It was a bridge between different worlds because, I was a Catholic priest from 2006 until 2019. And in 2020, I started my doctorate, and part of what I was doing was trying to find a way to survive. It was COVID, and I had to find money, and I'd been cut off from any sort of support from the church. So that was
But your
part
first
of
thought
what I was
was
doing.
become a grad student.
Well, it wasn't my first thought, but it was the only thing that was concretely possible.
I'm going to commit myself to eating ramen for the next 4 years.
Yeah, you're like, if I'm going to be in
That's
isolation,
wealth.
unable to go meet other people, I might as well
Yeah,
better
right.
myself.
Yeah. Well, I am grateful for it. It was a hard time for everybody, but I'm grateful I had a roof over my head.
But you switched from Catholic priest to PhD in mathematics. Isn't that a
No,
bit
it wasn't.
of a leap?
Okay, it wasn't a PhD in mathematics. This is why I
Okay.
call it a bridge. It was a PhD in ancient history,
Oh.
and I was doing digital humanities, so I was applying a lot of math. But I previously studied physics. That's what my bachelor's degree was in, physics and, well, astrophysics at McGill. And so I had a math background from there. Um, I didn't get into the PhD thinking I was going to be as computational as I ended up being, but I have to say that I've been programming since I was a kid. I was 7 when I started programming on my TI 99 4A, and I've loved it. I've loved computers basically all my life, and yeah, so I was trying to figure out a way to survive. That was certainly part of the story, but I was also trying to use what I had been working on for 20 years in the Catholic Church in a new space. So I had left the church for basically two reasons. One was I wanted to get married and have children, and the other was I don't believe in authority, and I don't believe that authority is a road, a trustworthy road to truth. And um, so that was one of the main drivers behind my research was how can I discover truth in any domain, but whatever. The sandbox I was working in was ancient history and archaeology. But if you're working on humanistic texts, it's applicable to many, many places. So how can you find truth in a humanistic domain um, without reference to authority? That was really an important question I was asking myself. And so I went to math as a way to represent things and manipulate them and compare them without reference to any external reality.
That makes sense.
So you built a mathematical Ouija board.
Exactly, that was it.
No, I like your map. I like your heart of darkness analogy. Like, look, the interior of Siberia, the interior or the vastness of the ocean. We don't know what's there. The here there be dragons kind of
Yeah.
analogy is quite cool. Yeah.
It also sounds like in truth searching, especially with historical text, you're relying so much on the writings of a person, and that comes with it all the biases or different things that person might put in their writing. So being able to kind of look at all of them and smush them together and compare them I'm assuming it might mitigate, or you're trying to mitigate some of that personal input on the historical truth. Or
Yeah,
Right.
no, that was a big part of it. Now, applied to history, it's actually very hard to do what I try to do, and I don't think I succeed in that domain, or at least not very well. You know, my doctorate is more about the limits of my approach than its successes. But in other domains like quantitative science, over the last 30 years, where we have a very large body of published work that is generally speaking truth telling, you know, that's an important distinction, I guess, because Innovation Lens really works on text that tries to tell the truth. It tries to map the empty spaces. Whereas historians do to, I think, a lesser degree for a bunch of reasons. One is the story itself is it's much more difficult to synthesize. It's much more fun to tell a story that's riveting and interesting than it is in physics. You know, in physics, people really don't care about the riveting story unless it's also mathematically formalizable and true. Um, in history, you can definitely tell a riveting story about the way that the Egyptians lived or the Babylonians, and get a long way with that. You know, you can argue just for the sake of argument. That's a big part of it too. It's sort of
Some
you know,
people make their whole careers doing that.
yeah. I mean, it's a sport, right? It's sort of that
Right.
is part of what's going on. So,
Yeah.
but for me, the thing that I really cared about was trying to cut through all of the debate and arrive at the structures that are invariant, and that's what I've tried to do.
Does innovation so I'm in my head, I've got the visual of the continents, you know, kind of, and the spaces in between. Does your product, does it like create new continents that are in between the two, or is like, does it fill in spaces?
Yeah, good question. Yeah.
Or
That's
how
a
does it work?
great question. Right, because the problem with continents is that we generally don't see them emerging from the waters, you know. But that does happen in science. That if you look at what we had studied 100 years ago and what we know now, you can see that there was a very low resolution image of the universe that gradually becomes higher and higher resolution in certain areas, and then other areas remain very much unexplored. So yeah, Innovation Lens as a map shows you the time-dependent development of science as well as the current state. So you know you can query it and look back 20 years ago. What did we know, and what do we know now, and what's the difference? Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. So in order to test whether your predictions are true, you can just look back and say, what would have we predicted?
Yes.
And then you can verify by then playing the tape forward to the present,
Exactly.
or whatever, a few years, and saying, oh, in 2015 we would have predicted, you know, this and this, you know, drones or something, and this and that. And then you play the tape forward and say, hey, 3/4 of those, or I think you said, you know, 70%, 7 out of 10 of those were right on the money, right?
That's right. Yeah, it's publicly verifiable. You can go on it with a
Right.
free account and you can see some of our predictions and look at what happened since then and see it. I've done
Wow.
some videos on that too that are on our YouTube channel where you can just see, yeah, it's a pretty easy overlay actually. You just show the predictions
Yeah.
from 2018 to 2021 and show the articles from 2022 to the
Right.
present. And it's
I
like,
I once wrote a short story about this. Like, if there were people who could predict the future, and then it was about like agents of the government trying to track them down, to hunt them down, to put them in prison because they were like screwing up all the stock market and everything by predicting the future correctly.
okay.
So just keep your head on a swivel, because there might be like a secret, you know, agency out to get you if you start predicting the future too well.
Seems like it would be
Well-
hard to catch someone who could predict the future. Like, I'd be at their house and be like, gotcha. They're like, actually, I'm out of here. I saw this.
No, they can only
coming
predict the
yesterday.
future like Jonah's thing can predict the future, like in these general sort
It's
of
a
ways.
distribution.
But
Yeah,
they
much
can't,
less
they
useful.
can't predict like what's going to happen tomorrow to me. They can't do it's. You know, this is the premise behind a foundation, right?
Yes, it is like
mathematical history.
psychohistory. Yeah.
Oh my God, you
something
do
like that. Yes.
psychohistory, Jonah.
Yeah.
Wait, catch me up. What is
See.
foundation?
Nope, Scott's on the outside. This is an inside thing between you and me now, Jonah. I'm just kidding.
No,
Just kidding.
I've
Let
left
me in. Let me in. Jonah, you want to tell them what psychohistory? You knew the word
well-
right away. I was going to call it mathematical history, like a doofus. So you know
No,
the actual
okay, so
name.
I'm not very good at it because Asimov, like, I once heard his books described as more typed than written.
Okay.
which I think is kind of accurate. So I
That's
don't
fun.
like reading him very much. But the idea behind psychohistory, as far as I remember, it's been a while, but is that there is an order to history, and you can sort of you could perhaps influence the order in which things happen and make outcomes happen over a very, very large scale, like centuries, millennia scale.
Mm.
And
Maybe
billions of
Adam, you're,
people, right?
yeah,
Yeah, it was like that. You could so I think the big thing was like this one guy who invented psychohistory was like, I predict in the Asimov Foundation series, which there's an Apple TV show about, and it's like Elon Musk loves the Foundation series, like a
Okay.
sci-fi series about interplanetary civilization, like an intergalactic civilization. And there's this guy in that who says, at the peak of their intergalactic hyper technological civilization, there's this guy who invents psychohistory who says he can mathematically calculate the future in these big grand swaths,
Mm.
and he predicts that the civilization will collapse. And everyone's like, that's crazy. How could this collapse? We have this interplanetary, intergalactic, hyper technological civilization. How could it possibly collapse? But he says, no, it really will. And people start to believe him. And he says, we're going to create this arc of knowledge to preserve. So when the collapse happens, there's this arc to preserve all the knowledge and technology of the civilization. And so people start to come and flock to this guy and help him do his arc. And I think I haven't read the whole
Interesting.
series, but I think he's right. It ends up the civilization kind of collapses under its own sort of corruption, and so it's sort of like a Roman Empire or whatever. But it's like, yeah. So that's kind of what Jonah's doing in a way. He's found a way to
Well, let's
not
let's
make a
dial it
single
back a little bit.
prediction.
Yeah,
Well, let's go a little
uh,
further. Jonah can
Time
predict if
crimes,
horse
starring Jonah
races.
Lynch.
Jonah's betting on the races these days. Let's just put it that way.
So
He's at the dog
let's
track.
let's
He's at the
dial it back a
he's
little
at the
bit. What I'm
dog
doing
track.
is I'm saying that the scientific community is ready to make discoveries over the next 48 months or 24 months, sorry, next 2 years,
Right,
in XYZ domains.
right.
That's a little bit less than saying everything that
Do you
Foundation
know if
says.
civilization's going to collapse or not?
No, but you're
No.
you're saying there are smart bets to be made, and there are ways to make them smartly, and not just being like, this thing or that thing,
Right. Or
and-
like
Right.
my friend
or
thinks
looking
this is
forward
cool.
instead of looking
Right,
back
right,
as
right.
to indicators of what's going to be big.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
yeah. And I can also compare that. We have a published article on how we did the validation. It's on our website, innovationlens.org. You can get the article from archive. But the basic metrics, I mean, there are two that are obvious. One is random guessing. So you just do whatever the hell you want and see if it's good. And that obviously doesn't perform very well. And then another one is follow your PhD advisor's advice. And so you look at the tradition of existing research and you go and find a gap and you write an article about that. And so you find your location in the space of scientific knowledge based on the existing tradition. And that
Mhm.
obviously performs well enough. That's the way that PhD advisors usually work. But our algorithm outperforms that by a lot. It's by
Whoa.
200% in the physics or computer science domain, by 300% in biomedicine. So what we've found is a pattern that allows you to do a lot better than what you would do if you just follow the ordinary way that scientists choose their next topic of research.
Yeah, and I also, as a non-scientist, non-researcher, think the idea of spending 3 to 5 years on a subject, you would want that extra help. You would be like, pick something that's going to be relevant and interesting all the way through. And I'm not like, all right, I guess I got to complete this thing now. But that's
I mean, that's the crisis that most PhD students go through, because you hit a wall where it's like, this is really, I've exhausted what I care about here, and I still have 2 years to work on it, and you got now that's also important, because you do have to carry the thing out all the way. You have to learn how to write articles and do the whole thing. But what I'm offering is an optimization where you can do a little bit better at the beginning in your choice of topic. And it also is helpful in a bunch of other ways. You can do a better literature review. You can see the startups that are working in that space. You can find the researchers who are working there. So there are a lot of advantages that you can get from our model.
And I have a question as a PhD researcher myself, but in the humanities. So you said it's not very good at like finding truth or making predictions in like history or the humanities, but can it help find popular research topics in the humanities for like a PhD student?
Well, I don't know the answer to that question because I don't have access to a large enough corpus of humanities work. So one of the great things about physicists is they got really tired of the pay to publish thing, and they invented archive at Cornell University in the 90s. And so basically all physicists around the world publish their articles for free immediately as soon as they're ready for eyes on them, as preprints. And then that expanded. Computer scientists started doing the same thing, and some other scientists. But essentially, computer science and physics are the two that have great coverage. And those are the two domains that Innovation Lens started with.
But in theory, if you had access, do you think in theory it might help with that?
Yes, I think it would help. I'm very, very curious to know that, and I would love to find a partner who would like to deploy this on humanities research or history or economics or one of the other fields that we don't cover
Yeah.
currently. Um,
Couldn't be economics because again, it has to be based on trying to find truth.
Yeah, well, actually, one of the
Digging-
cool things
digging at the
things
econ
about
list.
the algorithm, though, is that if the articles are, how can I say this? There is a certain amount of ability to overcome bullshit, and it's not like if you pile on with 100 articles on one topic, that doesn't really sway the algorithm. So,
Interesting.
that would
So
be cool
fads,
to see.
it won't be completely swayed by fads or by
No, actually, fads
hype.
get show they don't show up very much. It's not
Ooh,
about
that's
fads.
cool.
Yeah.
I would love to see that. I mean, especially because I'm like a philosophy ethics researcher guy. It'd be
Yeah.
really cool to see like what your thing thought the hot new ethical topics would be in like 2 years. I could see, although in some ways it's reactive to things like, for example, 2 years ago or 4 years ago, would it have predicted that AI ethics would have been a huge field? Only if it looked at the fact that AI would have emerged. You know what I mean? If looking just endogenously at the corpus of ethics papers, you wouldn't have been able to predict that AI ethics would become this big thing, probably. I don't think.
Well, I think
But
that's the
maybe,
point,
I
is
don't know.
that none of us are predicting machines the way that, because we can't keep all the pieces in to
Right,
compare
yeah.
them.
Right.
So maybe it would. Yeah, maybe it would.
I think you should
So I
run
don't
that,
know.
Adam. Go to the platform and put in some ethics research
But I thought you said you
queries.
don't have the corpus.
Well, inside of archive, inside of the computer science domain, there are a lot of AI ethics papers.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to see when did they start popping up and were we predicting them? Because we are predicting that domain.
It also could be like a subtopic inside of AI ethics because you would have the corpus for that then because they're all there in ArchiveX.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it'd be interesting to know, like, I don't know, are people going to be like, legal normativists or something in 5 years, or some ethical, topic is going to become super hip. It's quite interesting, but I do like the hard science stuff really, obviously, because I want to enjoy the technology that comes from that, right? I want to enjoy the, discoveries of drugs and gene therapies and whatever else gets invented. So the faster we can accelerate that, the better it is for all of us. So I'm super stoked on this. And it seems so interesting. I once stood up to a whole panel of VCs. I live in San Francisco and I am in tech and I interact with investors and I have friends who are VCs and interact with people. Anyways, I went to this conference and there was a panel of VCs. And these were like big dog VCs. These were not like little dog. These were big dog VCs. And they had, the mic going around. And I was like, I'll just be an imp. I share with you, Jonah, the same sort of distrust of authority. So I stood up and said, all of you, advance and talk about new technologies and, improving everything with technology. Can each of you go down the line and say one thing that your company has adopted, a technology you have adopted to improve your allocation of capital into startups? And honestly, they had nothing. Nothing. They went down the line and they were like, we use Google Docs. We use we've used some
I mean, yeah, in their
Wikipedia.
defense, things have probably gotten better in the meantime. But
well, this was like 4 years ago, 5 years ago. It was pretty interesting to when you said, I'm actually making a technology that makes VCs, because VCs just give money to like their friends or like what their staffers friends. They have these young staff members and the staffers go and like connect with startups that they know from like parties. And then they introduce them to like their bosses at the VC and the money just goes to them. So it's not like they're doing some like, they're not scientists. They're not using data. They're just using like their hunch, the hunch they have,
Well, okay, that's too broad a brush, though, man. I mean, that might be true
That's
about a
my
bunch of people,
experience.
and
That's my
yeah, I
experience.
mean, I don't know those young scouts either, so I haven't been able to get a lot of calls with the VCs
Yeah,
myself.
you got to
But
go to more parties in San
yeah,
Francisco.
well, I have a baby and a wife.
Yeah, it's hard with the
Babies
baby.
love parties. Oh my gosh, babies love
Babies
parties.
totally love San Francisco parties where people are all on ketamine. They love
In fact, most of the
that.
parties
They
here are
love
like
it.
90% babies. There's very few.
It's mostly babies, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, I'll have to think about that. But no, so
I'm
let
of
me.
course being somewhat cynical, but
You are
it
being
is
cynical,
true.
but
But
let
I'm
me
not
let me
being
give
wrong. I'm
you
not
a.
wrong either. But it is like that for a large part of VC. It's
Well,
kind of old boys
I'm not
network.
gonna claim to know everything about VCs. I'm just gonna give you one use case about data-driven VCs that we're working with now. And they've decided what they want to do is automate the whole pipeline. They've got a bunch of scouts,
Nice.
actually like 1,000 of them, and what they want to do is automate all the vetting. And so the scouts throw their ideas into the machine chooses them up and vets them, and then a
Wow.
very, very short list goes to the LP and the actual investors who are going to put their money in. So
That's good. See, I
here's the
like
cool
that. I
metric.
like
Here's the
that.
cool metric. Innovation Lens right now is landing 60% pass rate of the machines. So that means 60% of our predictions are passing their hour-long LLM that's going to vet the startup ideas against all their different agents. So I think that's pretty good.
Yeah, that's
Nice.
really good. Definitely better than a coin toss and better than a monkey on a keyboard. So yeah.
Well, it's a lot better than the other scouts too. So that's kind of the
Oh, you guys are the best scout. Oh.
So, Jonah, I'm hearing you talk about prediction, and that's what your game is, like that's the industry. But I also know, like, this may not be related at all, but prediction markets are a big thing right now here, where everyone's trying to predict everything and betting on everything. How do you see
Can we make some
Well,
fast
no, I'm
cash?
not.
Is what you're asking, Scott?
Well, I guess I'm seeing that seems like a really inferior version of just humans trying to predict at each other versus what Jonah's interested in, it sounds like, which is more like getting to real truth and not the game part of it, I guess. I don't know. I just want to see what
My
Jonah, what
question
your
is,
thoughts are on prediction markets, or
was
if you have any.
Jonah, were you the guy who bet like $75,000 on like January 1st that Maduro would get out of the head of Venezuela?
Yeah, I don't moonlight as a security agent. No, no, that would be a cool thing to get into, Scott. I guess there are a couple of things that keep me away. So one is the availability of capital. It's the same problem that we said before for investing in traditional markets. The other thing is that from an information standpoint, the idea that you have a special, super predictors, the idea that you can figure out the patterns in the data better than others. Certainly, there are many, many ways to parse the data and try to make predictions. The data source matters, and what I'm working with is only scientific articles. And I think that's kind of the specificity of what Innovation Lens does. Other people can use other things. I'm sure if I had Twitter data, the way that the fire hose used to be open source, you could, there are papers on this. You can predict the markets based on Twitter sentiment very well, so definitely with different data sources, you can do lots of predictions.
I was going to
But
say,
the
but
thing that
I'm
trying
on
to,
Twitter, so if you start including Twitter, you're going to get all my dumb takes in there too. I think it's keeping it to scientific research is probably not a bad idea there.
yeah, well, but I mean, there's the fact that the aggregate is useful. The average of what everybody is feeling about something does move, and that average means something too. So people can have the most random takes they think, but as a statistical body, as statistical mechanics, the whole cloud does move in one direction, and that means something overall.
Cool.
Yeah.
I have a question that is completely sideways here. This is a different,
Go.
but you mentioned you were a priest and you're no longer a priest. In my head, I'm wondering, how does one stop being a priest? And my imagine, which is not true, is that you march into like the Pope's office and you put your Bible and your collar down and you're like, that's it, we're done, like a cop would do with a gun and a badge. But what that's clearly not true. But like, what is the? How
I
does
think
that?
we've got a whole genre of movies we could start making.
I could do
you know?
that. I'm done. Bam, bam.
Yeah.
I need your Bible
know-
and your collar now.
Yeah.
You're out.
Scott, that would have been a better way. That would have been a better way. I wish that I'd had a moment like that where it was, slapping down the badge and saying that's that.
Very cathartic.
It would have been more cathartic. The unfortunate situation is that, usually if you believe in something like the Catholic Church for 20 years, as I did, you cannot quickly make that kind of a decision. Like it was an extremely long and painful process for me. So there isn't a cathartic moment where it's like, oh, you know what? Everything that I believed and said, and all the things that you, my leaders, have said to me over the years, actually, you know what? It's all not true, and you just
Right.
just hug each other and be gone. It can't happen that way. It's much more painful. So, and it's in a sense an ongoing process because the kinds of things inside me that led me to that life, the searching for truth, the searching to be a good man, searching to contribute positively to the world, all of those things remain true about me. And I guess having bracketed computational and quantitative methods for those 20 years, because I really did focus on philosophy, on theology. I have a doctorate in theology as well. That bracketing was something that also I've had to work through, and I'm still working through. So going back to quantitative methods for me was a part of the catharsis. It was like, okay, I've loved math since I was a little boy. I've loved computers since I was a little boy. Let's start from where I started and try to rebuild life from here, including all those questions about truth. So Innovation Lens is really kind of my my love child, in the sense that it's all of those things in one. It's an attempt to support my family, but it's definitely first of all an attempt to know the truth and communicate it, and do so in a way that is as free of bias as I can possibly do, which is bias from authority as well as bias from fads and bias from bullshit, and all the kinds of bias. That is explicitly part of what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, it seems like an extremely noble endeavor, and that's commendable. Very cool.
Oh my God, Scott just complimented an AI system. This is like bizarro land.
Am I making a convert here? What is
Don't teach it to write poetry. Just whatever you do.
No, but its poetry is so bad. It's yeah.
The poetry that it writes is pretty bad, huh? It's not.
Well, but this. Let me just say this. This is actually, I really believe and love this part. So what is AI, right? It's the aggregate of all the things that humans have written, and then you can put in multimodal, so you can put in images and other things too. But essentially, it's the aggregate of what exists, and then that distribution has some sort of fancy characteristics where it's not just a big gray blob. It's actually queryable in a way that makes wonderful text and wonderful programs and all kinds of things. But what do humans do? Humans invent languages.
Right.
Humans invented language.
Yeah.
And that's something that we go outside of distribution. So my whole idea of going into the empty spaces on the map, that's a very deep thing about humans, that what we do is we go into the unexplored territory and we map it. We discover what's there.
Yeah.
We describe it. We communicate it.
I was walking in Noe Valley, where I live in San Francisco, and I saw Dwarkesh, who's one of the most famous podcasters in existence right now. And I was
Dwarkesh,
like,
if you're listening to us, call us.
I should get Jonah onto Dwarkesh. That's what we should do. Because Dwarkesh talks about this a lot. He talks about how LLMs can, they kind of can spit out interesting stuff, and they can kind of, organize things and sort of say the predictable thing, but they're really not good at discovering new knowledge. And I was like, Dwarkesh, you should really talk to Jonah. Like, he has an AI that discovers new, or at least points in the direction of this new knowledge.
That's right. Yeah. It points at where you should go explore. It doesn't tell you what's going to be there, but it tells you what's likely to be important. Yeah.
And it could be an agent in a whole slew of agents that each one, right now our agents are just all different little flavors of LLM, but there could be in the future totally different, the agents could be based on completely different computational bases, much like the parts of the brain. They're not just all So they're not just all just visual cortices all over the brain that get sort of forced into doing something else. They're actually specially built networks for each part of the brain. And it seems like that you're basically building one particular part of
Yeah,
that
that's
AI
that's a good way
brain.
to think about it. And that is one of our offerings. We have an API and an MCP, so it's possible for you to take our predictions and use them as the basis for further queries. So an agent could go and
Crazy.
take our predictions and then go run the numbers, do the market study, do whatever else you want to do automated.
When you told me about this, my thought was it's so hard to capture the value from this. I mean, unless you had millions and millions of dollars to start with, then you could just invest yourself, or you could, but it's so hard being just like a normal person like us, like just normal non-millionaires. But then you created something that is like that the value capture happens at a very high level of capital. So, it's too bad if you have to like hopefully you can really sell yourself for or this service for what it's worth, which is it sounds like it's tremendously valuable, but it's hard to capture that value. So
Well,
Well, yeah,
good
you have
luck.
to.
I'm just saying,
Thank
I
you,
don't
thank
you
you.
have a
I
hard
mean, if there are
job.
any VCs or hedge funds listening, we could sell
Oh,
you a
we have
vector.
tons of hedge funds.
yeah, I was saying
and
part of it
VC
is explaining
listening to
what it is and
solutions.
what's going on, and that helps me for me understanding anyway. Just having
Yeah.
a conversation like this is huge for that.
Well, the other person, let me just say one more thing on that, because the other person that I'm talking to are philanthropists and family
Oh,
offices.
interesting.
So people who they have capital and they have an idea about the world, about human flourishing, about how to improve the future. And those are great conversations. And they're looking like also one of the first places that we're going to be able to monetize in a real way, because these are people who see beyond just the prediction thing, but it's also about what of the possible futures would we most like to have happen, and then align that with which are the most likely. And there's some leverage there.
Interesting.
Absolutely.
So wait, try to like spell that out one more second. So I can understand the science. You kind of predict where the science is sort of headed and you kind of go there first. With philanthropy, it's like I'm a philanthropy, I want to reduce malaria or something. How does your product help with that?
Well, so one thing is giving you KPIs for the ideas that you already have. If you want to dedicate a lot of funding
Uh,
to cancer research, we can help you decide which of the many things you could focus
oh,
on are most likely to be valuable in the term of a grant. So the next 2 to 4 years,
interesting.
that would be one way. And then another way that
Yeah.
we're working with more kind of visionary philanthropy is if we're talking about the future of money, or we're talking about the future of capital itself. Yeah, I
Democracy.
know you like to talk
Yeah.
about this, Adam, online, where you talk about basic income, universal basic income, and different structures for voting. People who have that kind of interest are often also interested in how do we optimize science beyond metrics like what we have, which is citation count or publication count, which everybody knows is a good heart law thing where you end up publishing bad articles and it's not very useful. So a tool like Innovation Lens in that domain is not directly maybe monetizable, but it's part of an ecosystem where it's like we want to optimize for the good of humanity, and this is a public service. So Innovation Lens could become a thing like PubMed, where it's a layer on top of existing research, helping scientists do better.
Hmm.
That would definitely be a very cool use for it.
Yeah, I noticed that in my research that they're really lack. There's a very large gap in trying to understand which journals are like high quality and which publications are high quality. There's this thing called like SIAGO, or it's it has a weird
Hmm.
name, SJRC or something. And you look on there and then there's this H index and there's like,
Yeah, yeah.
but all of them are, I mean, you just scratch how their methodologies and you realize these are totally imperfect and
Oh,
like
yeah,
they're not
yeah.
very good. But that's all we have to go on. So people just try to get into the high H index journals and they try to get into the high Siago metric journals. And it's like, why? I mean, they just do it because that's what other people are using as a measurement. It's not because it actually is the most impact. It's just because that's the metric people are using. So it'd be cool if there was really like, no, this is methodologically, these are the most impactful papers, and these is the
Yeah.
these are the journals that are creating the highest, so, getting the highest impact papers are coming in these journals. Like that would be a real service to science. I mean, I don't think it's a highly paid service. You shouldn't do it as your first.
Well, yeah,
I don't think there's a lot of money in it.
I don't think I'm going to get rich on that, but I have a grant pending at the National Science Foundation to do exactly what you just said. So
Oh, cool.
I said to them, look, with this tool, I can map the money that you have already spent on grants, the outputs from those grants,
Right.
articles, patents, and because we also map the patent database besides the
'cause those are
scientific
available.
articles. So I can show you, what was the actual output of your very large investment. And then we can map that against my predictions and see, could I have helped you do better? That's an open question, but I think the answer is probably yes.
Yeah, probably
And
yes.
and I'd love to
even
prove
if it's
it.
20%, but you said sometimes
Even
it's
if it's
200%.
1%, man, that's
Yeah,
billions of
okay.
dollars.
That's billions. Yeah. Wow. That's a really cool shoot.
Yeah.
God
So
damn.
it's going to work, man. It's going to work one way or
It's
another.
got
I'm
to
going to
get in
find the
there.
right people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very cool.
And the philanthropy people too, they might also just have connections out to this kind of thing too. So that's interesting to have philanthropy be if you're talking to VCs and philanthropists, you probably are talking to people with enough power and enough, connections to if they say, hey, this would really work over here, they can make an intro too. So I think it sounds like you're barking up the right trees.
Well, I was going to say, since we know that Dwarkesh and these VCs are listening right now, how would someone who's interested in the Innovation Lens, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you or get involved with this?
All right. Well, you can go to innovationlens.org. You can email me at info@innovationlens.org. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn, Jonah Lynch.
And we'll put this all in the show notes so people
great.
see it right at the top.
You can find me.
Yeah. And I realized when I saw Dwarkesh, I walked right by and I said to my wife, that's Dwarkesh. He's the most famous podcaster. He's so famous. Oh my God. Like I was totally like fanboy, like, oh my God. And my wife was like, why didn't you go up and like talk to him? And I was like, what do I have to say to Dwarkesh? He doesn't want to hear. He's probably just swamped with fans all the time. Of course he wasn't. He was just walking down the street with his friend. Yeah. But I was like, after the fact, I was like, damn, I should have gone up and just said, hey, your podcast is really awesome. I also have a podcast. It's called Solutions to the Multiverse. Like if he could just listen to even a few, I think that'd be pretty cool. He might think that's pretty cool. So next time I see him,
you just got to wander around
because I think he's in my neighborhood. That's my suspicion. Yeah. So next time I see him, I'll paparazzi him.
Cool. All right. Well, say hello from me.
Yeah. I will. And I'll also reach out to some of my friends who run funds and be like, hey, could we start a fund around just like, why don't we do our own fund and we all collaborate? That could be fun.
Well, maybe I should do a paper trading version and get some back testing and prove it.
Honestly, if you could use these predictions for public trading, then you could really, then it'd be really easy to raise money.
We could. All I'd have to do is pattern match our predictions to the publicly traded companies, and
I think you should spend the rest of the day on that because that's the most direct access you could get to money, And also you can use leverage too. You can get 3-to-1, 4-to-1 leverage, if you have the right traders involved in your team. And so if it's working, shoot, obviously that it's risky, but if you can predict 60% of the time the right answer, like what's going to go up, you can become extraordinarily wealthy very quickly.
Well, that would be nice.
Yeah. You'd be like the next Berkshire Hathaway, right? The next Warren Buffett. Because remember,
but you're bringing me back to the first investor. I have very few, but he really helped me at the very beginning. When I told him the idea, he was like, I said, yeah, and it's a machine that'll help us know what the truth is. And he took a beat and he said, who cares?
Yeah. The cynicism of the capitalist.
Yeah. He gave me 10K anyway, but I think it was just to say, go play.
That's awesome. Well, cool. I'm super jazzed. I'm more jazzed than I was at the beginning.
I am impressed that I have an AI, like a positive AI. You've done what I said earlier, that the making things and the selling things are two different skill sets, but you've done the selling things on me where I'm on board. I think this is a fantastic idea, and I'm really happy that we had this conversation with you today.
All right. Well, go to the website and subscribe, and you can give me $40.
Oh, nice. 40
good.
bucks. I want to get on the ground floor as an investor, but I don't have enough money, so I can't do it.
It's the chicken and the egg. We need the prediction to get us the money to invest in the okay.
That's right. That's right. Well, I'd go in on something that would just, where we just start trading.
Well, let's do that, Adam. I'm gonna do a pattern match. I mean, Claude Code can write that for me tonight, and tomorrow we'll start the fund. Okay.
We'll start the fund. We'll put in $5,000, and we'll see what happens.
New era.
Yeah. Well, we can test it against the past, right? We can say, what would we have done 6 months ago, and then what happened? What would our returns have been? Yeah. Exactly. So you can be pretty comfortable with it, I guess. I mean, I guess you're always put the money in the stock market. It's always kind of, you got to kiss it goodbye, in case. I like the idea of not sharing it with anybody and just using it just because you basically are like if you were walking down a beach and you found this like genie, and the genie was like, I'll tell you like 60% of the time what's going to happen in the future. And you'll be right 60 to 7% of the times. I wouldn't tell anybody I had that. I would just use it for my own benefit.
Okay, I gotta push back a little bit. I know we're closing here, but my dream here is really to open source the whole thing and write an article about how it works and just give it away. I want to make a little bit of money first, but not that much.
Yes, I'm on that.
No, I've seen a lot of. I've seen no. I'm not against open source. Open source, if it's the right, but you have to open source the right things. I've seen things that are super valuable that get open sourced and then they never get applied because there isn't the way to get the funding, to get the money, to get people excited to go and do this, to go and do and build it out. But there are other things that it works really well to be open source, like Ruby on Rails, right? They open source Ruby on Rails, which was like a web framework, and it was still able to be applied everywhere because consulting companies used the open source framework to sell consulting services so they could still make money, and so it still became very, helped a lot of people. But other things, like I know a kid who open sourced a health library for like impoverished, like a very affordable way to like do like eye health and like health stuff with cameras. And he open sourced the whole thing, and then it never went anywhere because a bunch of poor doctors in the third world like didn't have any money to do it. Whereas if he had started a company, kept it, and he had applied it to wealthy markets and then subsidized its use in the third world, he could have helped millions of people. So I think it depends on the product. And this product, you don't want to open source it. This is something where you want to be the gatekeeper who makes millions and millions of dollars, and everybody else has to come to you and kiss your ring. And no, wait, maybe I'm just thinking of the Pope.
Yeah, it's like, Jonah, I encourage you to not take the emperor of the world position as your goal.
No, it's not my goal. It's not my goal.
I think Jonah would make a good emperor of the world.
Human flourishing. That's
a very nice man.
Yeah.
Of all the technocrats who could take over. See, this is the problem, Jonah. People like you, people like me, people like Scott, we want to like open source things, get enough for our families. And it's the evil, wet lizard men who want to own everything, right? So good people like us, we have to try to we have to contend with like the Elon Musks and the psycho billionaires,
Well, it's the person who desperately wants to be king that you don't actually probably want in that spot.
Exactly. You're like the Numa Pompilius. Numa Pompilius, the second emperor of Rome, who didn't want to be emperor, but they were like, that's why we are making you emperor, because you don't want to be emperor. So there you go, Jonah. You have to become emperor, god, king.
No, thank you.
It's been decided. It's been decided. All right, we should probably end. This is a long episode, but I think it's great. It's all involved.
Oh yeah,
so it's
very fascinating. Good stuff. Thank you very much, Jonah, for joining.
Thank you, guys.
Yes,
it's a real pleasure.
Hey there, thanks for listening to that episode of Solutions from the Multiverse.
Yeah, we're back with a little after roll. Hello.
Hey, after roll. Roll that after roll. So basically, we want you to subscribe.
Yeah.
And rate and review and tell someone, like take your favorite solution and send it to someone who you think it would like blow their mind to hear it.
Yeah, we love making the show. We're proud of it, and we're excited. We want other people to show. We know that the main way people find podcasts is word of mouth. I know that's true for me. I listen to my friends who also listen to podcasts tell me about ones, and I go, okay, I'm cluing into that. So we want to be part of that chain.
So thanks for being a part of Solutions.
Yeah. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again real soon.
Bye.
Bye.